Hi, this is John with Fix It Planet. Today we're going to take a look at this Nintendo Switch that has a damaged charge port. And maybe when this occurred, something was bridged and it also blew out the audio video encoder chip, the PI3 USB encoder chip. So we're going to go through this step by step. Looks like we're missing a screw there. That one's already missing, so I guess we won't be putting that one back. But we're going to go through this step by step, just like we did with the first video, the one that we uploaded previously to this one. Except the difference in this case is going to be that we're not only going to change out the USB-C charging port, but we're also going to change out this audio video encoder chip. And so some of this is covered in the previous video as well. If you don't need to see through the entire process, I'll see if I can remember to post in the description below the time stamp for where that repair for the audio chip begins. Now that we've got that out of there, let's take a closer look at the board. So once again, you can kind of see down inside the port. Sorry, jumping around. You can see down inside there, these pins are all bent and damaged and pushed back. And I believe that's bridged over something and caused this to happen. Let's take a real close look here. Sorry, I know it's a little jiggly, but basically you can see there's a burn actually in the chip. There's a burn right there on that leg, right here on the corner. And we're going to check those filters as well. There's 5 of them there. Point them out here again in a minute. We'll check for a short all around that chip, and then we'll check again after we remove the chip to see that the short is removed. That one, that one, that one, that one, and that one, those that row there, and this port and the chip all. And then we'll check for shorts all around there. That row that I pointed out earlier, we'll check that for shorts. See if they're okay. We'll replace that chip and the charge port. You can see the burn there a little bit closer. So what we want to do is make sure these filters are okay. And we're checking for continuity from one side to the other. And making sure that it's not bridged in between. Okay, we're going to get this chip off of here now and see the extent of the damage where that leggy is burned. I have a feeling the pad will also be damaged there, so we're going to wind up scraping a little bit of the masking off of that trace leading up to that pin. And we'll tie into that with a small jumper. And I forgot or failed to preheat this board, so it took a little bit longer to get the chip loose. So I'm going to show the chip at an angle where you can read the writing, and you'll be able to see exactly what chip you need. PI 3 USB. Audio video encoder. Let's take an even closer look here at the board. You can see there, right there, where that pin was damaged, that it's also torn up that pad there. We're going to have just a little bit of room left on the end of that trace leading up to that pad to tie into with a small jumper wire. So I'm going to apply some solder to all the different pads and get this prepped and ready for the new chip. So everything looks good, but we've got way too much solder on the center, in the center there where the big blob is in the middle. We need to cut that down a little bit. We don't need all that solder. All the pads are looking good though. Alright, flip the board back around, sharpen up the image a little bit, brighten things up. So you can see that the small trace there has a little solder on the end of it there. Once we get the new chip in place, we're going to attach a small jumper wire to the end of that trace. So first thing I want to do is I just want to tack this thing down, hopefully in the position that I want it in, so it doesn't move around on me, and then we're going to flow it into place using the hot air. It's a little off center. I need to readjust that. We'll do that here with the hot air, and we'll get it to sort of snap into position on its own. Okay, so once we have it in position, everything's flowed into place using the hot air. we'll come back and tack on this jumper wire onto that leg. All right, now let's settle it down. Let me refocus here. Come in a little bit closer. Okay, so you can just see the leggy that we've put onto that little trace. We're going to clean some of this flux residue off, see if we can expose that a little better. So we just cut the excess jumper wire that we don't need off, and we've cleaned the surface well enough so we can get a good view and double check and make sure that our work is okay. So that looks pretty good. We can move on to the charge port. So you remember this is the one that probably caused that problem. So we don't want it anymore. We want it out of there. It doesn't work. Now that that's removed, we're going to go ahead and use some solder wick and wick out all the leftover remaining original solder. This one in this corner there, that's usually the one with the highest thermal mass, so it's a little more difficult to remove all of the solder on that one. Just takes a little extra effort. Once everything is removed and cleaned back up, we can now go ahead and we're going to add a sufficient amount of solder onto these pads, effectively tinning the pads. So this is really very important for this particular repair, to replace this port, because we have the two rows of pins that have to be soldered on. Obviously the ones in the rear you won't be able to get access to with a soldering iron, and they'll have to make a good connection using a surface mount hot air method. So what we're going to do is put the amount of solder on each one of these pads that we are going to solder to, and then we're going to come over here to these pins on each one of these pins, and we'll put an adequate amount of solder on each one of these pins as well, so that once we start to heat up the port with the hot air, then each one of those pins will make a good connection to the pads underneath. So the first thing we're going to do here is go ahead and just get this mounted with the anchors, and we'll line it up with the legs and the pads all sort of lined up evenly, and each one of these anchors will get soldered in place, and we'll come back after this with the hot air and flow everything into place. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at the solder on each one of these anchors, and also on the pins, but mainly the anchors. We'll be able to see those really well. We'll apply some downward pressure using a pair of tweezers on the actual port, and we'll be able to see that solder melt. And as that solder begins to melt, then that's a good indication that all of the solder is starting to melt. So we'll give it a little bit extra to make sure that everything is thoroughly melting underneath as well, where we can't see, and then let it dry, let it rather cool. And then everything will cool down, and it should all be nicely done. We'll come in with an X-Acto knife, and we'll check these pins on the outside that we can see to make sure that they're nice and solid. If they are, then there's a very good indication that those behind it that we can't see are also very well secure. Don't forget our little leggy here, and let's give it a test. We'll put this thing back together and see if it works. I'm still working on the audio portion for these voiceovers and things like that. I'm not sure. Maybe it's okay. I could probably improve on it. So again, I apologize if the audio isn't as good as it could be. All right, before you put this piece back on, though, make sure you put your CPU fan in first. You'll see why here in a minute. Wah, wah, wah. No. For some reason I can't seem to keep this thing in frame. Alright, we're going to check it first with the AC adapter by itself. And as you can see there, it's coming up fine. It's charging the battery. And we've got good numbers on the meter. So next we'll want to check it with the dock to make sure we can get external audio and video out to an external monitor. Now, granted, there's no audio in this case, you won't be able to hear anything, so you will just take my word for it. So we're definitely charging in the dock, and it is being recognized and shutting off the display there, and we'll check over on the larger monitor here and see that we're getting an image. There's the signal. Everything looks all good. So hopefully this video is useful for someone out there. Hopefully you found it interesting, and if you did, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do that, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye now.